All right. We're in and we're on and we're going.
And we're live.
Yeah. And so since neither of us have an established podcast that like the intro of this is the Nick Dog Show or this is the Noah Show, that may not be happening. But since you're going to be starting one called
One Nation Underdog.
Yeah. And that seems quite appropriate because there is something very connected and meaningful about the dog-human relationship, and I think that's what draws a lot of people to it. And maybe not even obviously from the get-go, but once you're doing it, seeing just how meaningful it is to help somebody connect with their dog and learn this whole new thing is way more than just a person and their dog. Like, it requires that inner work that we're always talking about and doing the work and things like I've noticed, and tell me how you feel about this, that like wealthy people in particular are very used to being able to throw money at a problem and make it go away. And there is just A, dogs don't give a shit if you're wealthy, and B, what you are required to do as a wealthy dog owner is no different than what is required of somebody who has no money but wants the same thing. And so yeah, that's something that is what kept me in this for as long as I have been, is just how meaningful, connected, helping, relevant, and I suppose analog compared to everything just being Instagram, digital, virtual. It's just a very connected experience.
I'm very glad that you mentioned that, because the beginning of my journey into this industry, I almost had a bit of a grandiose perception of what I was going to do, and it revolved around basically opening up people to their inner dialogue, or call it the inner work, if you will, because dogs become that mirror or that reflection that is going to show you exactly where you are not. And then I started to work with dogs, and I thought, oh man, there's actually a lot going on here mechanically that I can explain in terms of body language and communication. And
things like being vulnerable and being risky emotionally, like with humans, it's a very complex situation, but with dogs, it's a very low risk thing insofar as like you either get the results or you don't. And they're very simple creatures, and humans are just so nuanced and subtle and complex that there's just so much complication in human to human relationship. And people feel that way a lot with their dogs. Like, I'm not getting the point across, and my dog's being resistant, or is being stubborn, or
they're not listening.
Isn't listening. And when I'm sure you feel the same way, when I watch people doing the thing that they're trying to get information across, it's like they're attempting to speak a language that I'm fluent in, and they're just like making grunting noises as a metaphor across to this dog, thinking that the dog's just not listening, when really they're not even saying anything close to what they think that they're saying. And I think that's part of one of the biggest parts of our roles as dog trainer, is to teach them some letters and words and then sentences in dog, so that they can actually get their point across and not assume everything is just because my dog is stubborn, or my dog won't listen, and my dog this or that and the other thing. But like, no, almost all the time that I'm working with somebody, it's I even today I was working with somebody, when I go to someone's home for the first time, I tell them, when I walk through the door, I don't need you to try some new thing because I'm here. I don't want you to like think that I'm going to immediately take over what your dog is thinking. No, whatever it is that you do when someone comes over, do that. And that's where this all starts, that I'm going to be like, all right, so as you can see, that's not being effective. Try this instead. But yeah, it's like, to be fluent in dog as a language, that becomes our responsibility to teach them that they have the way to get information across. And as much as they're more similar to our psychology than a cat is, because cats are just strange creatures, well, they're not humans. You do still have to learn how a dog dogs if you want to get the point across to them. And that's, as I'm sure you know, one of the biggest disconnections in dogs is that's not a person. If you're having issues with it, you don't solve it like you would a person. You have to reach into their world and speak a little bit of dog.
Do you speak dog?
I mean, fluently, and to the point where, like, I've seen people like bark at their dogs and try to growl at their dogs. And even when they're doing that, like, would I do something like that? Maybe, if I felt like it might get something across to them. But I also have a very broad understanding of what I'm getting across to them. And like even a dog's bark, that is more than just a noise to them. There's a bark for I'm stuck. There's a bark for I'm frustrated. There's a bark that's just an alert somebody's out there. There's a bark that says I'm about to fuck this thing or you up. And that's a level of discerning that you don't just come with that. That just comes with time and learning about it.
You know, that may be the number one. I'm sure there's probably, I could point to 10 most common things, but that might be the number one. Like, how do I get my dog to stop barking, Noah? How do if I Google how to make my dog start barking, and people will ask me this all the time, especially when they hear, oh, you're a dog trainer?
Yeah.
Oh, my dog is great, but they bark. And my first question is always, why are they barking?
Yeah. I need some context for that. There's no magic trick.
Like you said, there's many different types and
you
styles.
zap it with an e-collar till it's too scared to ever use its primary method of communication ever again. Like, no way. But yeah, I get that all the time. And people just want a quick fix for everything. And as you well know, it's never a quick fix. It's almost always lifestyle. It's almost always your dog can change to the exact proportion and degree that you can change, that you do change, that you're willing to change. And there are times when I go have a consultation with somebody that by the end of it, when I lay out, this is what it's going to take to remedy these issues and have it remain that way for your future. And by the end, they're like, yeah, I don't think I can do it. And I go, yeah, that's why for the most part, I do consultations for free, because I'm going to sit down and we're going to talk about not just do this and everything's fixed. Like, no, you're going to have to change how you interact with this dog. And they often say, oh, for how long? It's like, no, this is just how it is. This is how dog ownership is. And you have a huge misunderstanding, no fault of yours. There's a cultural misunderstanding about dogs. But that, like, when they ask me, well, do I do this for like a month or two? It's like, no, forever. Forever. This is how it is all the time. And I'm not ever going to tell you or ask you to do something that I wouldn't do myself. All the things that I'm asking you to do, that's all I ever do. And like, this is just how it is. And if we get to the end of that conversation and they're like, I don't really have the schedule or the time in my life to do this. And I go, yeah, well, then we can talk about management. We can talk about what to do in situations that it gets crazy, and like, you can do these things. You can keep your dog in a crate. You can do this and you can do that just to avoid the problem, which will never fix the problem. But at least you can still have your normal human life and just like put the dog over there or just do this sort of a thing. But it will never fix the problem to avoid it. And that's what a lot of people do.
Ultimately, to change a dog's behavior, you have to change a human's behavior. And behavior change, is a tough thing. It's an even tougher sell. And yet, I find it very inspiring when I connect with somebody who goes, that sounds tough, and I'm willing to do it.
Yeah.
Like, I love this little guy.
Yeah.
I know I'm the problem. Just help me out. Tell me what to do.
Yeah. And so, if someone comes to me with that during the consultation, we're doing something for sure. Yeah. But if I get to the end of that and they just are still like, oh my God, I just had no idea. I will ask people too, like, I'll sometimes lead with this, like, why did you get a dog? Like, why is this dog here? And most of the time, people don't really have a good answer for that. And a lot of times, if I really drill down, it's like, well, I was kind of lonely and I don't have kids, or I have kids and they're out of the house. I just wanted like a stuffed animal, an animate stuffed animal around the house. I'm like, well, did you take into account what a dog needs to feel fulfilled day to day? Because like, living in an apartment and spending all day every day on the couch, I mean, a human can kind of get away with that a little bit, but for a dog, you're going to deal with just pent up, I mean, whether it's need for exercise, pent up need to fulfill their needs to explore and to smell and to investigate and participate. And one thing I noticed through COVID was that I've always joked around that the more time someone spends with their dog, if they don't know what they're doing, the worse off the dog is. And like I've said that to people and it has made people mad. Like that's an asshole thing to say. And I'm like, a little bit. And I'm kind of being hyperbolic in that, but that through COVID, when it was only person and dog all day long, not allowed to go, not allowed to be outside, not allowed to, the dog didn't meet any other dogs during its sensitive periods, didn't meet any other people during that time. And now the dog is 1.5 and you go back to work and the dog has to just fend for itself. And all you did that whole 1.5 years was cuddle it like a baby and sit with you. And then at a certain point, they have to like participate in worldly things. And they go out and they're just like,
Yeah.
And that was the first time I ever declined to have a dog in my pack and declined to have a dog go with me on walks, because everything about doing regular things with that dog was so overwhelming. A lot of other things had to happen before that dog could come with me, and the person was ill-equipped to do so. So yeah, COVID had a huge impact on dogs' overall psychology, but also the quantity of dogs that people have in their homes, because people just like used a dog, and no fault of theirs. They were restricted socially, and they went and got a dog, not taking into account that at a certain point life's going to go back to some version of normal.
You know, I've never heard it put that way, and I can't really argue with it, although I would like to point out a distinction that time spent with a dog does not equate to presence with the dog or actual communication, effective communication with the dog. Because so often dogs are around, but does the dog even know that you're here? Can you read them? Do you know how to play with them well? Can you fulfill some of these natural desires that they have? I just got back from a little lesson that I had with my client, and you sort of alluded to this earlier, that like they might try to switch something up or act a little bit differently because the dog trainer's here. I think they were a little bit nervous too, but the reaction that I got was a similar one when I show up, which is, oh my God, he doesn't act like that when you're not here. Oh, it's because you're here that he starts. I'm like, no, he just, I did have a history with this dog. I trained this dog when he was 4 months old. Now he's 6 months old. He's like, hey, finally.
The person that makes sense to me is here.
You get me, man. You understand me.
Well, it's funny that I was also with a client before I came here, and I was meeting this dog for the very first time. And within 20 minutes, I have made more sense to this dog than maybe anybody in its life ever has. And we're talking, they've only had the dog for 3 weeks. It's a new sort of a rescue thing for them. But in 20 minutes, I understood what this dog was going through, what it needed, what it's not getting, etc. In 20 minutes, more than they had figured out in that 3 weeks. And that's not a humble brag. That's just like when you work with dogs, you figure things out way more quickly. And something that they brought up, which is similar to the spending a bunch of time with dogs in the COVID sense of it, that I hear a lot. This dog bounced around from place to place, and they're sad about that. And the whole, this is a rescue dog, and terrible things have happened, presumably, which not always the case. And they said this dog has bounced around to people's homes so much, I think it doesn't know that this is home. I said, okay, well, if I had a dog for a week, and then I sent that dog to my trainer friend for a week, and then they sent that dog to another trainer friend, and all of those people are competent, what you're going to get back at the end of that is an extremely well-behaved dog, because it has nothing to do with spending time over here and time over there. It has to do with, did the people in that household make sense to that dog? And so in that same way, bouncing around from place to place made that dog better. So it's not the bouncing around. It's that it went from this person who doesn't know what they were doing in this way to that person who doesn't know what they're doing in their weird sort of way to that. And so in that way, that was bad for the dog. But that I had a thing up in Sonoma where some trainers of mine, the Healing Pack, Andrew and Rachel, you guys are great.
Shout out.
That they sent their dog, one of their rascally knucklehead dogs, to stay with me for I want to say it was a month, and I left one of my newer dogs that could use some new experience, and I left it with them, and we swapped dogs for a month, and each dog went back to their respective home better than they were before. So it's not the bouncing around that does it. It's just all of these environments where people don't really know what they're doing, and that for sure has a negative impact of dogs. But it's not because they don't really know what home is. And in that same way, like a dog that I see a lot of glorification of sadness of dogs, like their owner died and look how sad this dog is and has been for X amount of time since things in the home got different. It's like, well, you're treating them like a human in mourning, where if you just took this dog and just took him for walks and took him to do cool shit, they wouldn't spend time wondering why everything is different. But there is this period where people want the dog to be in mourning because the person that they knew the most wasn't there. And it's not like dogs don't grieve. That's kind of like a gray area where I personally don't believe that they do to the degree that we see a lot about it on social media, but that people want there to be this time where the dog is like crying for the owner that is no longer around. And I'm like, the more time that dog spends wondering about why things weren't what they once were, that has a heavy impact on them. But you get them engaged in stuff and doing stuff and participating, and no, they don't spend time dwelling about the past. They're not even capable of it.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you about a dog grieving once you brought that up.
Yeah, I would love it.
Sure, I've seen videos on social media of a dog at a funeral, like howling.
Yeah.
And it strikes me as a gray area, and truthfully, I haven't been around older dogs enough or known a whole lot of dogs that have lost.
Yeah.
I don't know, who are they grieving for, humans or dogs or both?
If you're asking my opinion on it generally, I would say that is not what is happening. But as far as like what I see all the time on social media, that it's both. Like their sibling died, and what it generally is, as far as my opinion on it, is that there is a sadness cast upon the whole household. And because dogs soak up our vibes, and we know that is true, that if all the humans are sad around this dog, they are unintentionally or just not knowingly encouraging that dog to remain in this sad place. And it's not as though because a dog dies, we should just be like, fuck it, let's move on, everything's fine.
Like, get a new puppy.
Yeah, no, it doesn't need to be like that. But if we're not mindful about how we're behaving around the dog, or the state of mind that we're in around that dog, it's almost like we're making them remain in this like place of uncertainty, or everything's different. And when a dog stays in that place for too long, that it's just kind of confusing. But no, I've never seen in real life a dog in mourning because a person or a dog is no longer in their life. I have not seen it in that way. Anytime something's different in a dog's environment, they may behave differently. But like people ask me all the time when they have separation anxiety, when they leave the house or whatever, or we'll get into fireworks because I have something very important to say about that. But like when people ask me, oh, did my dog exhibit the separation anxiety that they do at home while they were with you? And I can honestly say thousands of dogs, never once. Because I provide an environment for them that is engaging, has dog stuff in it. We're constantly doing stuff. And if we're not doing stuff, it's because we did stuff, and they are satisfied for the whole rest of the day. Like we did enough to where the whole rest of the day is just spent chilling and lounging. And if they like went to the door like, where's mommy or where's daddy or something's different, be like, hey, you don't need to worry about that right now. We're doing stuff. And they're like, oh, all right. Yeah, sure. So no, I have never even seen a dog exhibit separation anxiety when they might lose their mind at home. If they come stay with me, I do enough to fulfill them that doesn't even show itself.
Yeah, I recently took a dog in who is 7 years old, and they said, man, he he doesn't like to be alone. He hates the crate. He thinks he's going to die if he's in there. And I'm like, hey, buddy, you want to take a nap? He's like, yeah, I'll go in here. I'll take a nap. And actually, when you were describing the whole doggy morning scenario, maybe this is not funny to anybody else, but it's funny to me. I'm imagining like a Labrador who people are babying because it's in a grieving process, and then I pull out a ball.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not going to be sad when the ball is out. We have to remember these are animals, and I pull out a piece of kibble. My lab will go crazy.
Yeah.
And I love that about my dog. I love that when I'm not around, I could leave him with my cleaning lady today.
Yeah.
And he's like, yay,
Yeah.
having a good time. I'm happy to be alive.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else to say on the subject?
Well, yeah, because like if we're humanizing a dog, then it almost feels disrespectful for them to go from my buddy was around and now my buddy isn't, be it person or dog, and now immediately I live my life as though that person or that dog isn't there anymore. Like even like there are things that we do as people that where we're sad about a thing or we're disappointed in ourselves about a thing, and it almost feels important to sit in that grieving, pain, discomfort for a while to acknowledge that an unpleasant thing has happened. And so if we do that as people, and then we assume that the dog needs to do the same thing, then it feels almost disrespectful. Like as a dog, your best friend, whether it be a person or dog, died yesterday, and you're acting today as though that person or dog never existed. Like, don't you want to be sad for a little bit?
Are you spiritually bypassing your grieving process?
Yeah. And that's what I have noticed, that it almost feels disrespectful for that. People will feel that way, that since that person or that dog is no longer there, how can I pull out that ball and you just be that stoked about it? Don't you want to like reflect about all the times that once were? And I'll tell you right now, no, nothing about the future nor the past is your dog ever thinking about. And not because they're spiritually void, it's because that's not how their brains work. They don't wonder about the past. They don't wonder about the future. They don't sit ruminating about the past. They're not capable of it. Stop. If you sell yourself that, you're going to treat your dog in a way that will be forced to become true because you treat them in a way where you compel sadness out of them. Hot take. Sorry.
Hot take, but
Yeah.
I'm here for it, man.
Yeah.
It brings to mind a situation that happens to me frequently, which is when I take somebody's dog and they go, oh, goodbye. Oh.
Yeah.
And then they see the dude like excited to go with me. It's like, oh, they're almost like a little hurt.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, oh, well, he gave him a treat, or he's
yeah.
got a toy.
No, the depth of my relationship is so deep that, like, all right. And so I'm going to mention this again, even though I've mentioned to you in human form before, that people will often ask me, especially the first time a dog is staying with me, like, are they okay? Do you think my dog misses me? And I've never actually done this, but I do. I guess maybe like a paramedic or a cop might joke about awful things because it's just part of, like, they deal with difficult things and you joke around it just to deal with it. But like, people will ask me, is my dog okay? Or do you think they miss me? And I've never done this, but in my mind, I'm like, yeah, they've been asking about you a lot. And they would be like, oh, really? I go, no, of course not. That's not how they think. In fact, they're having a kick-ass time. Go enjoy the vacation that you're on. And it's not disrespectful to just forget about it. Forget about it. Let your trust in me and how I interact with dogs be the guiding light for you to be okay with the fact that you're on a vacation. Guess what? So is your dog. Your dog's on a vacation. Let them have some fun, man. You don't need to check in. If you want to check in, check in.
Yeah.
But no, they're not sad about you.
No,
I'm sorry.
They're not.
No.
They never are.
No.
However, I do think it is appropriate to meet my clients, and which is what you're saying that you do, is you don't actually say that. But I really want to.
Yeah.
And it's worth having some sort of conversation about, hey, when you're not around the dog, it's not actively wondering, where's mom? Where's dad? Am I going to go home? because they really are. I mean, a lot of dogs that I've dealt with recently are very young. They're puppies, and a lot of people get them as pseudo children.
Yeah.
They're not having kids, but we are having puppies. And it's helpful to have somebody like you and I explain their psychology to them a little bit to put them more at ease. Like, it's actually going to do your dog damage to perpetuate this sense of, oh my God, you had this situation and it was tough, and now that you're home, we're going to do so much snuggling on the couch because I know you missed that.
Yeah, to make up for the lack of presence. Yeah.
But I do want to dive into some story time from you.
Yeah.
One of the first things you mentioned during this conversation is speaking dog and the difference between different barks. And maybe somebody who's listening to this didn't know that barks could mean different things in different circumstances and contexts.
Yeah.
How did you come to learn the art of the communicating with the canines?
Well, I appreciate you asking, because it is a long story that I've never been able to tell in a way, like even one-on-one with somebody. I've alluded to it, and I've made mention of it was a lot for a long time. I started at nothing, whatever, but I have never had a platform to really tell the whole story. And I think it's important. I think it's important to know that someone can go from knowing nothing to knowing a lot, and all that takes is some time and effort. I do get it across to people that I don't have something special to me that isn't available to other people. I wasn't born in a pack of wolves and therefore soaked up a thing that you'll never soak up. It was just time and effort and exposure to dogs until that all made sense. And so when I was 29 or 30, I had worked at Starbucks for 12 years. I had worked at Trader Joe's for a couple years, and I just got fed up with that kind of a lifestyle. And so one day I just decided I'm done with this. I did do the whole, whether it's God, the universe, I'm just like, I need something more than what I'm doing. I am better than this. I need something more meaningful and relevant in my life. I was always a fan of the dog whisperer, Cesar Millan. And for those of you that want to criticize him, he is even better than anybody thinks. I have volunteered at the Dog Psychology Center. I have met the man, worked with the man himself. My dog has been on stage with Cesar Millan. He's even better than he seems on that show, and he understands animals more than anybody that I've ever seen. And so just one day I just asked the universe for more. I said, show me something that I can do with my whole heart, so to speak. And it sounds silly to say, but the very next day I woke up and opened my Facebook. We're talking, 2011 maybe, and a friend of mine had just finished an apprenticeship grooming dogs in San Diego. I lived about an hour and a half out of San Diego. She had finished an apprenticeship grooming dogs, and she said, hey, does anyone want to work with dogs and not have a dress code and just hang out with dogs all the time? And I'm like, there you go. That's it. And so the day after that, I drove down to San Diego and interviewed with this guy. His name's Dane. He ended up being my dog mentor for 4+ years. And I went down, interviewed with him, and he said, if you're ready to do this, then let's do this. I gave my 2 weeks at Trader Joe's. I gave my 1 month's notice at where I was living, and I moved down to San Diego to, they were going to do a dog walking business. And so I moved down there to do dog walking. And so to start, they had already, their whole family worked with dogs. There was grooming, there was walking, there was boarding, there was all that, and they were starting that. But it was early, it was, 12, 13 years ago, where something that, I don't want to say we pioneered it, but we wanted to, I was going to say enforce, not that. We wanted to have no kennels or cages and do it in a house. And so I remember when hashtags were a little bit more effective, that like cage-free boarding was how we ended up pushing what we were doing down there. And so I moved in with these people where they had about 10 to 15 dogs in their home all day, every day, and they specialized in whether it was last chance dogs or dogs that had been failed by other trainers. They were very intelligent people that had been working with dogs for their whole entire lives and multiple generations of show dogs, farm dogs, and they were all such just unique and strangely individual people that just soaking up. I did some grooming with them, but pretty much all my time was spent walking and boarding with them. And when I got down there, it was one thing to watch the Dog Whisperer show and feel like by watching this, oh, I at least have a foundation of understanding. But putting what you watched into action,
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like I had nothing in me, because my uncertainty and my fear of being in a house of 10 or 15 dogs was so noticeable by the dogs that my very presence when I first got there caused multiple dog fights, where there's this person in the house, I don't know him, he's clearly afraid, he's anxious, there's a tension amongst the dogs. And there were times when I first started down there that my presence caused dogs to fight each other. And I remember I was crying one time because I caused this dog fight, which ended up getting my mentor bitten in the face from it. And here I am feeling guilt and shame about all of that. And his mom, who was our groomer, she's like, if you're going to cry like this, you have to go outside. You cannot have this emotional experience amongst these dogs. They need a confident, calm, certain, deliberate presence in order to maintain a household of dogs. And so I just spent time among them in the house, like cleaning up shit, like doing all the rookie duties of being a new dog person. And my mentor just said, while you're here, you observe. I don't need you intervening. I don't need you doing anything. Just watch what they do, take some pictures, sell it on Instagram, show people what's happening here, but do not participate in any of it. And I'm like, all right, that's pretty easy. So I observed, spent about 6 months, 3 months just observing what they were doing. And then when I started walking dogs, I started with one. And that was fine. And then I remember the time we're like, all right, you're going to have 2 dogs today. And I'm like, 2 dogs? That seems like a lot. That one weighs 100 pounds. Boy, oh boy. And by about the 1 year mark, I was comfortable walking maybe like 3 or 4 or 5. I remember the first time that I walked 6 or 7, and if I have pictures of it, they're all out in front of me and pulling me all over the place. And in my mind, I'm like, look at me, I'm doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I have dogs. And to look back on it, it was kind of foolish and dangerous because I didn't know what I was doing, but I constantly rode the line of what I know and what I need to know, and always kind of putting myself in that position to advance, to move forward, to try another thing that is harder than the thing I did the day before. And maybe about a year and a half in, we were having like 20 to 25 dogs in our home all the time, all day, every day. I was walking maybe 3 groups of 7 at a time or 2 groups of 10, and just being around dogs all of the time and slowly learning how to act to maintain the calmness in that household, to allow playing when it's time to play, but to be willing to say, all right, we're done with that right now, was really, really important. And then I remember the first day, about a little over a year and a half in, where I was walking a pack of 10 or 12, and I was really nervous about it and really unsure if I could do it. And this is going to sound so cheesy, but I would take out groups like that and I would wonder, like, can I even do this? Like, I don't know all these dogs. It's very challenging. What am I going to do? And just one day I stopped saying, can I do this? And I went, I can do this. And I think that's important. Like, it's cheesy as shit. I'm aware of that. But that difference, how a dog sees it, like how you move, how you act, how you interact with them when you're wondering if you can versus that you know that you can and you're going to do it, that's everything to them. The way we use words, they use body language. They can smell how you feel, and then that way there's no lying to them. But I do remember the first time that I had a large group that things changed from can I do this to I can do this, and that changed everything from there on out. And so from there, we ended up getting a bigger home. It was clear that my mentor, believed that I could do it. And then I would go out every day and pick up between 10 and 15 dogs and walk them all myself. And it was down in San Diego. And as part of our I guess part of our business plan, they're like, you're a reasonable looking person. Let's make you famous down here for being the dog guy. And like, I was new to it. I'm like, fucking, all right. I had a big mop of curly blonde hair, as I'm sure you can relate with, always wearing my sandals and walking dogs in sandals. And Instagram wasn't what it is now, where it was just like, hey, we're just sharing what we're doing, not trying to, anyway. What Instagram has become is insane. But I would just share what I'm doing every day, and like kind of telling the stories of, look at what these dogs are doing. This is this one's name, that one's name, this one's staying with me. And like multiple people would reach out to me, be like, hey, we every day before my kid goes to sleep, we show your Instagram to them, and they know all the dogs' names, and they love seeing how they're getting better. And about the two little past 2.5 year mark, I moved from mostly walking, which I was still doing, and then we brought more employees on, and they started walking dogs, and I started moving into training and not doing anything outside of what I know. But it is funny to look back at how little I knew, and I was actually training dogs, because I did know more than an average person. But about the 2.5 year mark, I started training dogs, and then it just kept on growing until there were times when, at about a little past 2.5 years, that I would be sleeping on the couch while 50 dogs hung out in the living room. And if I had to get up to pee in the middle of the night, you learn, well, how do I go from the couch to the bathroom while 50 dogs are asleep at 3 a.m. and not wake up all the dogs? So learning how to be completely neutral and almost invisible among a pack of dogs is a crazy valuable skill. Like having a pee at 3 a.m. with 50 dogs sleeping on the floor became something that I had to do like every night, and serving dinner to 50 dogs every night. Like sometimes that would take an hour and a half to, I would usually do about 10, 12 dogs at a time. And constantly people would wonder like, oh, well, how can you even do that? Like, well, don't let your experience of having 3 misbehaving dogs in your home lead you to believe that somebody who does know what they're doing can't manage a home with way more than that. Every single human being in that house, which was between 2 and 4, every single person in that house knew exactly what to do all the time. So if I left, I knew that my mentor was there, his mom was there, his brother was there, his dad was there, that these dogs, it was made very clear what was expected of them, and it was very clear that the humans are the ones keeping everybody safe. And that is a really underestimated side of having multiple dogs, that while there are skills that dogs have as far as hearing things and smelling things, that they exceed our ability to do things, but a dog will start to get a little carried away with keeping the household safe insofar as deciding who can and can't come into the house if there's just an imbalance of who's who in the household. And for these dogs, like, not only were there 50 dogs in the household, but half of them had bitten people or had bitten dogs and gotten into fights, and half were pit bulls. And like, people don't even have a place in their imagination for what that looks like, or what how that even plays out, because they would imagine, oh, well, you keep them all in crates and cages. Like, not a single crate. Not like, if there were a dog that was really gnarly, then my mentor would keep that dog right by his side, so that if any dogs approached that dog, he would tell those dogs, get away, like, leave this dog alone. And that was a very quick way for that new dog to learn, oh shit, I don't have to fight to keep myself safe. This person's gonna do it. And so, yeah, that went on another 2 years. So I spent a total of 4 years down there. And by the end, I use this number as just the highest benchmark for what we did down there. On Thanksgiving 2021, we had 75 dogs over for Thanksgiving. Yeah.
Must have been a big turkey.
I mean, we certainly didn't do turkey. We're not giving toys and treats to dogs at that quantity. They're all just kind of the young ones are playing, the old ones are chilling. And that was the most we ever had. But like, it was fascinating to watch all of these dogs, many of which don't know each other, all cohabitating together, and safely, like no fights, none of that. And so we ran this thing beautifully. And by the end of it, we had multiple employees. We had a house just for small dogs. We had one for big dogs. And there was some small dogs at the big house because they were used to that. But we kind of separated into small dog houses over there, big dog houses over there. And spending 4 years being surrounded by dogs all of the time puts you in a position, like it wasn't school learning for a few hours a day, Monday through Friday. For me, it was just all of the time, 24/7. And I say 24/7 because I slept amongst them, and that it accelerated my understanding of dogs way faster than I think someone could learn in any other way. And so at about the 4.5 year mark, I left there to open my own dog business up in Sonoma. I actually partnered with somebody to go open up a dog business up there. But for a little over 4 years, I went from knowing really nothing and being really bad at it, and then slowly realizing that just being deliberate and calm and confident but certain and all of that, and learning how to move through the world, I mean, really like a dog, so that you can be a human amongst them, and you kind of let them do whatever it is they're going to do until they do something they're not supposed to do. And you go, hey, you can't, we don't do that here. And they go, oh, okay. So being very clear about the rules and expectations of the household made for a very harmonious household with more dogs than people even have an imagination for to understand that. Because like if I've told people I had 10 dogs in my house, and they're like, what?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I also sometimes had 75. So how about that? And so, yeah, from there, I went on to do my own thing, which was at a much smaller scale. And you could argue that it was irresponsible to have that many dogs in a house at once. It didn't play out that way because nothing bad ever happened, or at least nothing severe. There had been dog fights early on in it, but that was kind of my evolution from 0 to enough to open and start my own business, is just saturating myself with so many dogs that no amount of learning from that trainer or that trainer would have had any kind of impact, like just sitting amongst them, walking them, and being in it for that long. So yeah, that was kind of the gist of it.
Wow. I love that, man. There's so many rabbit holes I want to dive down. And
Yeah.
in fact, our stories, like a lot of other things between you and me, have some pretty crazy similarities.
Yeah.
But I love this idea of immersive learning.
Yeah.
And that was so crucial for me. And I still consider myself very new to the game, or new
Yeah.
to the industry. I mean,
Yeah.
I always will forever have a white belt mentality when it
Yeah.
comes to the dogs. But at the same time, there was a very crucial period of learning that was very important for me to be spending almost every single day just with dogs
Mhm.
and around other dog people to bounce these ideas off of. One thing I do want to ask you more about, though, is can you tell me a little bit more about your transition from dog walking to dog training? Because I know that for you and for most like walking with the dogs
Mhm.
is a big part of the training. And
Mhm.
at least we can say for sure it is something that every dog owner wants to master or
Mhm.
feel like they have a good handle on, and it's plays a big part in most training systems
Yeah.
is the dog walk. So can you tell me a little bit about that transition from walker
Yeah,
to trainer, and,
for sure.
and what did that bring up?
Yeah, because initially I didn't notice or realize how valuable walking nicely, with loose leashes on that walk. So like you're not just like have this dog stuck to you because they have no other choice to do that. They're all willing participants. They're walking nicely together. We're cohesive as a group. Early on, I didn't know that to a certain degree. I'm training dogs already. Like it didn't really occur to me. I'm like, look I'm a dog walker. Look at me go. But
Mhm.
then when I would pick up and drop off these dogs, because people do care a lot about their dogs. And so I had very intimate relationships with these people, as far as like they're trusting me to have 4, 5, 6 hours a day. Some dogs came 5, 6 days a week with their furry best friend. And so it got to the point where, I would be sending them pictures and sending them videos. And of course, what comes up from that is how are you doing any of this? Like, I can't get my dog to do any of this. I can't have my dog around other dogs. You're telling me you took this dog back to a house of 30 dogs and they were fine? I'm like, well, they weren't just fine. They had a great old time. And so I didn't realize early on that I was training dogs. And so when you go from one field to the next or one endeavor to the next, of course, when I started training dogs, or going from suggesting that they do this and suggesting that they do that, and they're like, well, can you come by for like a session? And I had to confer with my mentor at the time. I'm like, do you think I'm ready to come by for a session? He's like, well, if you do, I mean, keep in mind you're gonna fuck up sometimes, you're gonna make some mistakes, but you can make a little bit more money and, you know, just broaden your skill set. And there, like, I can remember the first walking client that I got myself. I can remember the first time I went to someone's house and did my very first training session with them. I can remember the first client that I got from Instagram, and it was for like a board and train, and I didn't do that great of a job, and we had to have some follow-up stuff. But yeah, it was almost just like the order that makes sense, where I started just like suggesting things, and they're just like, oh, you're so amazing. And when you're new, you do feel that you're somehow special because you learned this little bit. If you're familiar with the Dunning-Kruger effect, I learned this much, and now I'm an absolute rock star at it. And I'm in the same boat as you, that 12, 13 years in, I'm like, no, of course, there's always more to learn. And so it just kind of naturally progressed to suggesting that they do this, suggesting they do that. And they're like, and then it got to, well, can you show me how to do this? And so that we did group classes where I would just kind of be a fly on the wall, and my mentors would take the reins for that, and I would be learning that. And I mean, we were doing agility stuff and obedience stuff as a way to bolster the relationship, not as though having a great sit and a great down or a great recall somehow means now their behavior all the time will be perfect. But obedience stuff is a great opportunity to just dial in that connection between human and dog. Do something awesome, you get something awesome. Do something wrong, I'm going to say, hey, it's not like that, or I'll just ignore you. And obedience stuff has a great way of just strengthening the relationship. But when we would do classes like that, it wasn't just going to a park and practicing sits and stays. Like, a lot of these people's goals were, well, I want to be able to take my dog to a cafe and sit down and have lunch. I'm like, well, guess where the fourth session of this group training class is? We're all going to an outdoor cafe, and we're going to actually do the thing in real life, not just talk about it or tell you how when you do it yourself, you're supposed to do it. So everything was real world. And San Diego just had so many places where dogs can be and so many patios where dogs can hang out that it was just this perfect battleground, if you want to say, for real world training. Because if someone wants to learn how to do a thing, there's no amount of conversations or training at home that is going to get them good at doing the thing out in the world. They have to go out and do it, fail at it, have somebody there to say, oh, we're this, not that. Like, before your dog's going to have a bunch of friends on the patio or interact with that dog or that person, the first thing they have to do is just be there. Just be by my side and lie there and just coexist and share space and not engage and not participate in everything. First, you just have to learn how to chill. Once you're good at chilling, we can talk about, even though it's not really necessary, meeting other dogs out there. But yeah, it all happened very organically. And by the end, I would also do what you and I attempted to do with limited success. People didn't really join like I'd like. Big group pack walks every Saturday at Lake Miramar in San Diego, where I did my Saturday walks down there with a group of like 12 or 15 dogs, and people started noticing, and people would ask, like, oh, can we kind of tag along with you? And he said, absolutely. And then it happened so many times in a row. I'm like, let's make this a thing. And so we would all meet at 10 a.m. at Lake Miramar on Saturdays. And to this day, some people are still, even though it's been 5 years since I've been there, actually 6 or 7, some people are still maintaining that Saturday walk there, that we would all meet as close together as the dogs could tolerate. And then we would all go for a walk together. And I would kind of just have a talk with everybody at first. Listen, our dogs, this is not a social thing. This is not a party. This is not where our dogs are going to play. This is where our dogs learn how to walk alongside other dogs and just be. Like, and when everybody in a group of 20, 30, 40, 50 dogs is under the same rule set, which is We're not rushing up to other people. If someone asks, can they meet their dog? You tell them, oh, no, I appreciate that, but we're working on something. We're training. I know it looks fun, but we're doing something. When everybody in a group is holding all the dogs accountable to the same rules, like these are dogs that like couldn't even pass another dog on a 20-foot wide trail, and we're all walking 2 miles around this lake with no issues whatsoever. And if someone had an issue, there was someone there to say, oh, let's make a little space, let's do that. And so it's long story long, it was a natural progression we did group classes. I watched, and then I took on this Saturday thing myself. It became like a thing amongst other dog walkers, with like Angela Aiden of I don't know what her business is called now, but the Healing Pack, Andrew and Rachel, all of these people that started and did this at a similar time. We all became friends on Instagram, and we would attend each other's big group walks and see who could get the most amount of dogs in one place. And one time we had maybe 7 or 8 dog walkers, almost 100 people, 60-something dogs. That was on Halloween. We were people wearing masks and wearing crazy outfits and all going on a big group walk all together. But like Instagram back in the day was this place where nobody was like pushing some agenda to make money with these perfect videos. We were all just kind of vibing. And so, yeah, that's kind of the gist of it, that bit by bit, incrementally, that the things that I was learning myself, and therefore I knew more than my clients, I would teach them just what I knew. And then it got to a point, years in, where I'm like, I think I really fucking get this. Mm-hmm. And it always, and we talked about this before this started, training for me always included walks. Like whether it was group walks where these dogs are learning how to just cohabitate and walk together, their dogs coming and walking with me, my client and their dog joining on my group walks, where I'm like, if your dog is uncomfortable being 10 feet away from us, then start 50 feet away from us. And then as everybody's comfortable, and by the end, we're all just kind of walking alongside each other. But those group walks were a foot in the door for training, because just my evolution of understanding was always the walks are really important. Master that, and you know more than you think you do about dogs. And dogs learning how to just cruise around together is a huge part of them being well balanced and out in the environment. Yeah.
Yeah, there was something you said about, hey, this isn't a socializing thing. The dogs aren't going to say hi. Mm-hmm. I would argue that is proper socializing for the dogs. They don't need to say hi. Man, there's so many lessons baked into your story and your process. I think it's cool for me to hear all of this progression in terms of numbers.
Yeah.
And you're right, it does really shock people.
Yeah.
Even, maybe today or yesterday I was walking 6 or 7 dogs, and it turns heads. People go, wow, they're so well behaved.
Yeah, once you get to 3 or 4, you're already just...
Yeah, I'd say, 3's a pack, but once you see 4, people go, 5?
Yeah.
5 dogs. Wow. Yeah, you should have seen me last week.
Yeah.
And it's possible, man. Big dogs, small dogs. Something very special about, hey, just follow me, and we're going to move. We're going to go this way. I just told a client earlier, like they really they respond well to a decisive leader. And we're practicing right now when it's easy, but think about it. And I want to get your take on this, because probably a lot of the people that we work with can see you and can be inspired that this is possible.
Yeah.
But when they're holding the leash, they just struggle with this swift, decisive action. Like when the rubber hits the road, that's really the part that a lot of these people struggle with, is like choosing the way to go, or feeling certain that they know more, or can control the dog in that way. And I have 2 short stories to share. One is with a client of mine who I was sort of struggling to get to make any decisive action with her dog. Her dog was very reactive. This was a little Frenchie who had bitten a person, maybe had gotten in fights with other dogs, was making a lot of progress with me, loved to play. actually, while I had this dog, the Frenchie tried to like attack this little girl on her bike, and that was when we had the big
Yeah.
when this Frenchie had this big oh shit moment.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
that wasn't okay,
Yeah.
and we had a little talk, and then he was
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
During one of the lessons that I had with this lady, taking her through the steps that I do to create this sort of relationship and what goes into the walk, and she was just really like, oh, but he's such a baby.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
bit people. Come
Yeah,
on.
yeah. Yeah.
Yet we were finishing up, and I was like, okay, I'll help you. I was gonna help her like take his stuff back up to her place, her building. We were in this apartment complex, and I started walking one way, and she started following me with the dog on her leash, and then in an instant realized we were going the wrong way. She goes, no, it's this way. And I'm like, that was it. That was the moment that your dog is looking for all the time.
Yeah.
Where you know better than me and
Yeah.
better than your dog
Yeah.
where you're supposed to be going.
Yeah.
And I was like, I literally stopped her in her tracks. I'm like, stop right there. That what you just did right there was the most decisive leadership I've seen from you this whole time.
I got the chills you saying that because I've had that moment dozens of times. It's
like,
a beautiful
this
moment.
is it.
Yeah.
This is the stuff. And you can tap into that.
Yeah.
Just remind yourself that you know more than your dog right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it is hard to just flip a switch that is confidence. But yeah, those moments where they show it, it is really important to like a dog to mark it. To be like, that,
Yeah.
stop,
Get a clicker out.
Yes, you did it. No, but it is important. Like if you
Sure
told them
is.
an hour later, it doesn't have the same relevance
Right.
of they did it right there and you go, stop
Yeah,
everything.
Everybody.
That.
Yeah.
You do have it. I knew it.
Knew it. It's
Yeah,
been there that
yeah,
whole time.
yeah,
You're a bad bitch,
Yeah,
baby, and you got this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, yeah.
and specifically when it comes to these people who are, dog is my baby,
Yeah.
I think of it, I try and relate it into terms which I don't always do this, but I'm like, think about worst case scenario.
Mhm.
You have the dog on a flexi lead, it's not paying attention to you whatsoever. You're stopped at a crosswalk, cars are coming, the dog goes, ooh, a butterfly, or ooh,
Yeah.
there's a squirrel,
Yeah.
or I'm just going to keep walking.
Yeah.
In that moment, I'm willing to bet you're going to find the strength
Yeah,
to say,
yeah. Yeah.
buddy, we're not moving
You're
until
funny.
I say so.
I do that with if they're like trying to keep a dog out of their office or something. I'm like, if the back room in that house was on fire and everything in there was knives,
Mm-hmm.
could you keep that dog from going in there? So
Bet they
that's
could.
the level of like I go way over the top with it, but to do exactly what you're just saying, I always talk about the worst case scenario. We're doing this because there will come a time
Mm-hmm.
when it isn't just like a minor mistake, that this is important, because if you don't have this skill set when you need it, it's going to be a fucking
Mhm.
problem that is going to devastate your life. But yeah, I
And-
do something very similar.
And it's always easier to practice it before you need it.
yeah.
And then you create a relationship
Yeah,
where it's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
of course they're going to listen.
Yeah.
Listen to you the past 1,000 times.
Yeah.
Why would they think any different when shit does actually hit
Ooh,
the
let me
fan?
jump in on that. So,
ahead.
at the first house that I was working dogs in, we had a garage, or a garage, but a door that led out to the garage. And obviously, being there all the time, the importance of having, let's call it garage door discipline, was of the utmost, because you got 20 dogs in the house, and they might know the house, but they don't know the neighborhood. They don't know where we're at. And so every single day before we got into the car or out of the car, we would practice that at this door into the garage, you do not come out of that door until you are given the okay to come out of that door. And it's something we practiced every day. I mean, at the time, I don't think I really knew the value of it. It's just like when you work with dogs, there are just certain things that you do all the time because that's how it is. And so we had hired a new person. I came home from a walk with the dogs, and I come around the corner to the place where I'm going to pull into the garage. The fucking garage door is, well, first I see two dogs that I know are ours, as in our clients' dogs, in the front yard. And I come around the corner, I'm like, what in God's name is happening right now? And so I come around the corner, there's two dogs in the yard, and they were dogs that were on the newer side. And I pull into the driveway or into the garage, and 15 dogs are in that house at the door. the garage door is open, the door to outside is open, and all of the dogs in the house were just waiting at the door, waiting for someone to tell them that it's okay to go outside. And like when I'm teaching, respect at the door, how to behave at the door, how to walk nicely out, how to walk nicely in, it's like there are physical barriers like a crate or like a doggy gate that they can't get through it. But with those things, and they're great tools, they don't learn that this is a psychological barrier, that at no point do you go past this thing except for one circumstance. When I say, let's go through that thing. And so that was exactly what you're saying, that we practiced this thing over and over again and didn't realize that a day would come when that is a fucking life-saving, business-saving, your furry friend-saving moment, that you don't go out that door unless you're given the okay to do so. And that was a huge epiphany day. And I'm like, dang, I didn't realize that that thing that we practice all the time had such real-world applications. And yes, there was someone else in the house and the door hadn't been open for very long. But to come around and see a dog choose to make a decision like that because we practiced repetition so many times that there was a psychological barrier. There was a thing in their brain that said, even if that's open, I don't go out it.
I used to call that, before I really knew much, I used to call that claiming the threshold. For me, it was the threshold from this place to the next place.
Well, that sounds nice.
It sounds real nice. And then I learned, we use threshold for something else.
Yeah. And I use claiming differently than that. But
Sure.
I mean, it's not like it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Yeah,
At a certain point, it's what label do you throw on it?
Yeah.
The action is the same.
Yeah.
Now I refer to it as like transition moments.
Yeah.
In to outside of the crate, front door,
transitions
the car
of
door.
Environment, even like whether it's a busy one to a not busy one or from one place to the next. We see dogs just go and zoom through it. So learning how to transition the environment reasonably is really important.
It's most of the time it's really just a matter of, can I be patient?
Yeah. yeah.
And then I'll ask my clients that.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, see, look, he ran out the door. Well, I guess we lost.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, we'll say goodbye and we'll just go get another dog. Like, no,
right.
let's figure this out.
Yeah, he's 6 months old. It's gonna happen. Don't be afraid to try again.
Yeah,
Don't be afraid to restart. It's something that I often find myself saying, hey, like he's gonna mess up. Don't be afraid to take a step back.
Yeah.
Reset him. Try again.
Yeah.
Be consistent.
Yeah.
All the good stuff.
All right. So just because you said patience and consistency, I have over the years just developed 4 tenets of dog training that I like to share, and obviously there's more to it than this, but I have never in any capacity shared them on a broader scale, and I would like to share them and just explain it. But clarity, consistency, patience, and follow through. Like if you can master those, not as words to remember, but as actions played out, then you are infinite steps ahead of other people. And by clarity, I mean something we touch on. Are we getting across what we think we are? And most usually no. It's not because a stubborn dog. Usually it's because we're not saying what we think we are. Consistency are the rules today, the rules tomorrow. Dogs, generally speaking, don't have a concept of maybe or sometimes or kinda or a little bit. Like there's a definitiveness that needs to be established in their world, black and white, before we can ever introduce gray. So clarity, consistency, and then patience. Like to a certain degree, we understand this with people. Like, we're doing our best. Even if we do something shitty, maybe we're having a bad day, maybe we're ill-equipped for the situation, but your dog, like they're not ever like lying about what's going on in their world. Like if they did a thing, either they didn't know they weren't supposed to, or you've allowed it enough times that it's not obvious that they're not supposed to do that thing. So clarity, consistency, patience with the learning process. Dogs have a very hard time with anger, frustration, volatility, and unpredictability. Like those 4 things, dogs are very sensitive to those. They're not sensitive to physicality. You watch them play with each other. They smash each other around. They put teeth on each other in a playing way, and they might yip if it's too much. But anger, frustration, volatility, and unpredictability are 4 things that they struggle with a lot. And then the 4th thing of that was follow through, that anything I ever ask my dog to do or not do it's happening. It's happening 100% of the time. And if I haven't practiced it enough that they know it, just rote, then well, then I show them how, and not in that way where like, you fucking, you have,
I'm gonna show you.
yeah,
motherfucker.
you disrespected me.
Yeah.
Like, no, it's like, no,
After all this time we spent together.
they didn't understand it. And so like, even as something as simple as a sit or a down or a wait, or you can't have that, you can't have this, like, you always have to follow through with whatever you're telling them to do or not do. And that's just a matter of trust and respect with that dog. So clarity, consistency, patience, follow through. The issues that they're sensitive to are anger, frustration, volatility, and unpredictability. They just have no interest in following that version of leadership where you're unhinged. And I try to get that point across to people, that saying you can't do that, or no, or knock it off, like none of those are coming out of me in an angry way or a volatile way or a frustrated way. Like we don't deal with people that way, but dogs are simple creatures. And so there's a deliberateness and an assertiveness and a certainty and a decisiveness, like you mentioned, of setting a firm boundary. But if you're getting that across like, don't you dare, or else, you might get compliance, but you'll see a dog kind of scooch their tail down and do those low wags and like hunker down and be like, all right, I'm complying. But what you're losing a little bit in there is their trust in you, and not respect as much, but the trust can just be kind of chipped away if we're always just losing our shit with our dogs. And I've had people, whether it was friends or ex girlfriends, come over and tell me that who I know you as person to person is different than when you're out with the dog, when it's just you and 20 dogs. Like I almost don't even recognize you as the person I've grown to love. And I'm like, well, when you're around dogs like that, there is no that many dogs. There's a phrase that people say right now that say, I am him. Like what those dogs need of me. I don't get any leeway in being that or not feeling like I want to be that today. To them, I am him. I am the one that says what is okay and what is not okay. And not because I'm a tyrant, but because I know more about modernity and the life that we ask dogs to do and be in than they do. Like the dog of the 50s that lived in the backyard and ate table scraps and got kicked when it did something wrong. I'm not saying that that's good, but it at least makes sense to them. And a dog today having its own wardrobe and its own Instagram and its own fingernail polish and all of these crazy things, like that's doable, but you had better have the main core needs of them met before you're going to give them all these other things. So I initially, it kind of hurt my feelings to hear somebody tell me that I behaved in a way that they found a little off-putting around the dogs. And then I realized that, well, in the hierarchy of what is important to me while around those dogs, it's not like my partner was unimportant to me, but that who I need to be around those dogs is at that moment more important than being the person that they came to know. Yeah.
Wow. That, has me questioning how much of my personality shifts and changes around when I am in a room full of dogs.
Yeah.
And living with a partner while also living with dogs. Yeah. Like that could be a source of some mismatch. And it makes sense to me, of course. I also think that it's important for me to take deliberate time away from the dogs. And here's where something
that's important.
Like I'm pretty active about telling my clients, like, hey, go have a night. Like, especially when they're really involved. And like I said, I want my clients to be invested in this process. And I love that. And when you're texting me 3 times a day for a month about this, about the dog, I can tell that you're giving it too much time and attention, and that could start to chip away at the humanness for which we can sometimes take for granted when we're always dealing with a dog problem. Yeah. So it's okay to take some time off and just be a human and just take a hike and don't bring the dogs.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Most people who ask me to hang out with dogs, I say no.
Yeah. Well, the fact that they take center stage in so many people's lives and we ask them to be good at going to a brewery and being around 100 drunk people and 20 other dogs that weren't trained to be that good. They came into this world being able to be in an environment like that, and that owner, most of the time, isn't any better at dog training than anybody else. They just happen to get a dog that thrives in an environment of chaos. And I see a lot of labs and golden retrievers that happy-go-lucky nature and just like a low-key, middle-of-the-pack, non-social climber sort of a creature is just out there like, I'll just go to this person, go to that person. Oh, and a dog is barking over there? Don't care. It's like they might have trained that into the dog, but dogs have a nature. They come into this world as a thing. It's our responsibility to kind of round the edges of the unsavory part of who that dog came in as, like bolster the deficits in that dog, but also have them do the things that they love. But not every dog is wired for and geared to the ability to be in as many dynamic and complex environments that people want to have their dog in. And with people, I will tell them, yes, we can try that, and yes, we can work on that, and yes, we can go out there and do it. But no, I cannot promise that your dog is a dog that is going to love being in an environment like that. That part's not up to me. It's not. Yeah, and can they get better at almost anything? Of course. But like in the same way, if you were an introvert, I cannot turn you into a complete and total extrovert. I can teach you some extroverted ways. We can go out and do extroverted type of things, but you better have that alone time and downtime and solitary time too, because I can't work outside of the nature of what a dog is or what a person is. Like that's something you learn very early on in working with dogs or animals. You can never go against the nature of a creature. No, you just can't. You can't make them be what you want them to be. They already are what they are, and you can work within that and you can improve it, but you can't make them be the thing that you decided they would be before you ever met them. And so like I had a mini Australian Shepherd for one of my clients in Sonoma that they wanted it to be a emotional support animal. And so they bought it. My son is going to college. He has depression, anxiety. I'm going to buy him this dog, and this dog is going to be everything that he needs to feel okay about the world. Is that a nice idea? Of course it's a nice idea. But that dog came into this world terrified of everything. Terrified of dogs, terrified of people. And here's where it gets kind of funny. No, that dog was never going to be an emotional support animal in the way that they imagined. And this is a conversation that I talked about, but they didn't take to heart per se because it didn't make sense to them, that the through line for that kid, I mean, he was 19, 20, if he would have provided what that dog needed to feel confident about this world, he would have gotten everything that he was hoping for as far as feeling confident about things. Like the through line to that dog being an emotional support animal would have been that human becoming everything that dog needed to thrive in this world, and watching this dog go from fearful about things, the skill and the discipline and the know-how to work it through that, and watch it go from terrified of everything to look how confident I am. If that kid would have worked through that with that dog, they would have had a relationship that could have been something close to what they were going for, but what they wanted was just to buy a dog, and now it's that. And that was really crazy to watch, that they just decided before acquiring this dog what it was going to be, and even though it was never going to be that, they were just relentless about wanting it to just be a thing that it could never be the way they were going through it. But if that kid could have just learned how to have some dedication and some discipline and figure out this creature and then be the thing that it needed through all of that, you would have acquired a skill set and an understanding that would have made everything better. But yeah, we don't get to decide what they are. They are a thing, and then we get to work within the confines of that thing.
I always talk about it as moving the needle. I'm sure you've heard me say that before, but the needle starts somewhere.
Yeah.
Depending on how old your dog is, genetics, breed, history, all that stuff.
Yeah.
That will dictate how much we can move it and how much time you're willing to put in.
Yeah.
And I love that story about the Australian Shepherd. When I was 19, 20, and I had my oldest dog, Hopper, he's a golden retriever. When I took him with me to to school, it was that relationship where he was my emotional support
Yeah.
animal. Shamelessly, I needed to get out of paying for apartment fees. But because of the life that I felt I was responsible to endow my dog with, all of a sudden I had better habits,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
was
yeah.
getting outside, and I was
Yeah.
waking up in the morning.
Yeah.
And it was a very transformative period of my life that
Yeah.
ultimately, I didn't know it at the time, but ultimately led me to being here. They give it back, man.
Yeah.
They
yeah,
really
yeah.
give it back.
Oh yeah, the amount of work that you're willing to put in with that dog, it gets reflected back and off a lot of times in real time. But I do have that conversation with my clients where I tell them your dog can change to the exact proportion and degree that you can change and that you can make sense to them, but also be easy on yourself. Just because I told you all these things, you don't wake up tomorrow incorporating all of that. This is not a learning process for your dog anywhere close to as much as it's a learning process for you, because I can take that dog out of your environment, out of the situation where you humans are. I can put them in my environment, and I will get a side of that dog that you'll never ever see. And I only say that because I want you to know that it's possible, because look at all these things that you said your dog can't do, and there it is doing it. And I do want people to see that that is possible, because they often don't have, as I'm sure you know, we put these limitations on our dogs. Oh, they showed some resistance to here, they can't ever do that. Well, no, I will show them, look at all these things that we did. It's possible. It just comes down to, are you willing to do what it takes to get it there? And some people aren't, and some people are too busy, and that's, that's okay. Even though I've worked with dogs for a long time, humans are more important than dogs. Hot take. Sorry. If we have to work on management because someone doesn't have the time, you could argue, well, then why do they get a dog? Well, who cares? They have a dog. And so if we just have to work on management for a bit until they have the space in their world to put in some more work, then that's fine. But yeah, I do like to show people that the very thing that they thought couldn't happen not only can happen, but can happen immediately if it's just done in the way that makes sense to them. Tell me if you can relate with this. So amongst my fellow dog trainers, we would share, sorry in advance if you feel thrown under the bus for this, people, but when I would get a dog for the very first time, and I would get a list front and back, printed out or written, of all the things the dog cannot do, will not do, is scared of, is incapable of, etc. They can only eat at 5:42 p.m. It has to be this kind of food served in this sort of way. I put 3 drops of that on it. And it's like, when it comes to people's dogs and their food, I will usually oblige and do the thing that they said to do. But like, I'll take a picture of it and send it to my other dog trainers. Like, here, I got another person who has decided that their dog is incapable of all the things that all dogs can do. But what I would do is use that list as the things that I'm doing. Like, my dog can't do, insert a list of 20 things long. My dog can't be around dogs, can't go to this place, can't do all these things. And that's now my thing that we work on for the duration of the dog being with me. And I'll be like, hey, look at your dog. You said your dog can't be around German Shepherds. This is his new German Shepherd friend. Oh, your dog won't nap on a this or that, or can't do this. Like anytime a dog shows a bit of resistance to a thing that is reasonably normal to do, and it's no fault of the people. It's not like they know better and are going, fuck it, I just won't. But I will use that front and back page thing that they send me that their dog's incapable of doing to be the things that we work on while that dog is with me. It's like a roadmap for the psychological deficits of the dog when it comes to me.
Yeah, what I'm hearing there is, like, at least from my experience, people will often get very set in that this thing triggers my dog, or my dog doesn't trust men, or this is just who they are, because the 3 times that we saw a dog that looked like this, they reacted this way. And it can very often be the exact medicine that your dog needs.
It is the thing. Yeah, to be around it in a way that isn't forceful or pushy or fucks them up. And I guess when you say it that way, it's like, keep in mind, I'm not just like thrusting this dog into infinite situations that are overwhelming. It's like, no, we go
Mhm.
nice and slow. We go bit by bit. I bring in trustworthy people. I use trustworthy dogs. I had wigs and hats and fake beards and mustaches and balloons and vacuums and all these things that dogs show often innate resistances to. I had all that just around. I'm like, all right, we're working on that. You don't like men in hoods? Well, what if this man that you do trust puts on a hoodie and then puts on a hat and then puts on some sunglasses or has weird hair, and all of a sudden that thing that you were afraid of, will you trust me? And then I turn into all those things and they're like, you're still the same one? And then we spend the whole rest of the day being around it and neutralizing that until all of a sudden there I am, fake bearded with a wig on and a hoodie and sunglasses and a hat, and the dog's hanging out with me. And I'm like, all right, so that doesn't mean they're fixed. We have started the process of desensitizing them to the inborn fears that they came with. But yeah, it's if they show a fear about it, that's not great for them. And especially if it gets coddled their whole life, that like, oh, my dog's afraid of men. Okay. Are you going to spend the next 14 years never having a man anywhere in your general vicinity? And sometimes that answer is yes.
Sometimes it's yes.
Yeah, it is. Sometimes it's yes. And that sucks, man. And I have seen, as I'm sure you have, dividers down the middle of the house. These dogs cannot coexist together. I don't know how to do it. I've tried everything, so they say. And now we've just divided, this house is for Fluffy and this house is for Rusty, and they are never going to sort out their problems. And just like this conversation started, avoiding it will never fix the problem. But I'm sensitive to the fact that if you don't know any better, avoidance and management, it's fine. But it's never going to solve any sort of problem.
Yeah, when you were talking, I knew that you didn't mean you're going to thrust these dogs into
Deal
the
with
thing
it.
deal with it. You can't run away.
Yeah, shut up and deal with it. Yeah.
Although I do think that there still are trainers out there who might take that approach with the same intention in mind that you or I might have, but still there exists a little bit of that mentality, like you're not allowed to run away.
Yeah.
And I can speak from my own experience. When I first started training dogs, before I knew much, I wasn't taking that approach, but I would say, okay, your problem is this dog barking at you behind a fence.
Yeah.
Every day that I show up, guess what we're going to do? We're going to go to that dog that's barking at you behind the fence.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until I got more information and had a dog myself that was afraid of specific things where I realized there was a better approach to just shelf it for a little bit and then build some confidence elsewhere.
Yeah, okay. That's where I
And then
assumed
go
you were
back.
going with that. Yeah, that
It's
sometimes
like-
the way through is doing all these other things to give them a broader skill set, and then we try
Right,
again at another
Right.
day.
And for my own dog, Leo, who was afraid, I got, found him on the streets, cars would shut him down, loud noises, all that stuff. I just didn't and weird stuff, inanimate objects, a bag floating in the wind. Sometimes even just a few years ago, at night, a leaf, he just, ooh, I'm like, bro, what is this?
Yeah.
But it took a period of a few months, just played with him. You got him obsessed with a ball.
Ooh, yeah. Finding the thing that they care more about than the fear of the
than
thing.
anything else.
That's a great move.
More than anything. All of a sudden, that was just background noise.
Yeah, or it might even catch their attention. They're like, fuck
For a
that.
second.
Where's that?
I'm busy, dude. I'm working. And then it's gone. And then it can really be gone.
Yeah.
But it did take, talking to people and, oh, maybe I shouldn't just poke the bruise all day.
Yeah.
Maybe, and he was a younger dog. Thought, let me just give him some time to grow up and not have to deal with a garbage truck every day of his life. Let's let him gain some trust elsewhere.
Yeah, and I love that of recent you've reached out to me a couple times so that we can work on a problem together, because like what you said about being a white belt in training, there are always people better than you at the thing that you think you're best at, and it doesn't even mean better. Let's say we both knew 1 million things about dogs. I might know 500,000 different things than you know about dogs, and that we've noticed that we kind of know most of the same information, but some of our specialties are different from each other. So to not feel competitive with other trainers and collaborate and get heads together, and maybe someone else has dealt with this problem more times in more dynamic ways than you have. And that little what was it, a shepherdy type of a creature you brought the other day that was timid and fearful?
Yeah,
with-
Anatolian.
yeah, that one. Like that you brought that like to my job while you were working dogs, and we just hung out with this dog. And again, like I joke around about being kind of like overly assertive or pushy about things. Like, no, I deal with a lot of sensitive and timid dogs too. You don't get to rush that process. And we spent 45 minutes, whatever, with that dog. And by the end of that experience, everything was better. And having another person who is willing to slowly go through a process, and I noticed this with my ex, that she also worked with dogs. And so in this household, it wasn't just these are Noah's rules. If I weren't there, same rules. And dogs learn these are just the rules. So that like with this dog, they're like, oh, with the dog that you had, it was fairly new to you. And like, all right, well, Nick is getting this across and, you know, I'm learning. And then a second person that the dog is maybe a little bit leery of goes through the process in a super appropriate, supportive way. And now there's two people within this dog's circle of trust that maybe in a short amount of time, that dog has never trusted anyone else to that same degree, because I saw that the dog was leery of me, and so I didn't stare at it in the eyes and call it a baby and reach for it and tell it to do all of these things. No, I waited until it felt comfortable enough to be like, you could be all right. Can I come over and say hello? And then it does, and just everything slow and gentle. And yes, my little baby. And I just from like a masculinity standpoint, I zoomed out on what we were doing out there one time, and we're like sitting on the ground saying cutesy little things, baby talking with a dog. And I think I'm going to look at the camera for this. It's really important. Dog training isn't just do what I say, shut the fuck up, do it, don't do it. Like it's not like if you like the battle between positive only and everything else. If you're training dogs, you're doing always mostly positive things. That's how they learn how to do stuff. It's all positive. Good job. Great. I love it. Keep doing it. All of that. And for a timid, fearful, anxious dog, you don't provide harsh consequences for being afraid. You just show them that you're cool. You show them that you're trustworthy. You build up, build up. You can do anything you want within means. I might stop you by saying, oh, hey, we're not doing that right now. They still have to have rules, but how you go about it is way more gentle. But like, yeah, I zoomed out on us sitting there, and we were both like cooing little baby sounds and being cutesy, sitting on the ground with a little creature at a gym while people drove by. Like, what the
dudes
fuck
are
is
flipping
happening?
tires and throwing barbells around. They're like a little baby.
Yeah, who's the little sweet baby? Oh, look at how
Yeah.
lovely you are.
Granted, she's
Oh.
an 85-pound shepherd mix.
Yeah, but that doesn't decide what a dog needs.
mentally, she was very fragile, very sensitive, and we had to acknowledge her as such.
Yeah.
And by the way, everybody, this was a dog who I was told doesn't trust men.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
here
yeah.
we were
Yeah.
creating this trust
Yeah.
just on some time that we spent
Yeah.
not asking her to do anything
No.
outside of her comfort zone. We're just going to be here. We're just going to ignore you.
Yeah.
And my favorite part of that whole interaction,
I have a
was-
favorite too. I'm interested in what
Okay.
yours was.
Noah picked up a stick.
That was mine too.
At some point, he just goes, huh, what is this? And then
What is it?
a lot of things shifted for that dog. Hold on. He's holding something. What does he have? Should I? Oh, I can. All of the sudden, like this
Yeah.
neurological
Yeah. Everything opened up.
plasticity
Yeah,
like
yeah,
sets in motion, where it's like,
Yeah.
wait a minute, this guy wants to engage in some play
Yeah,
with me.
yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I'm very adamant, and I try to encourage my clients to play with their dogs as much as they can, especially the afraid ones, especially the timid ones.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, this isn't so bad.
Yeah.
I can play here.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and food is great too, and you know, find what motivates your dog.
Yeah.
But I forget who said this, but a dog can eat when they're afraid. They can't play when they're afraid.
Yeah. Yeah, when a lot of dogs can't eat when they're afraid. There's a level that if they're so afraid, they shut down for all the things that they care about. And I do ask people to note that. If they lose interest in the things that they love, even if they're not showing severe symptoms, that is a severe symptom, and that we need to dial things back a little bit. But yeah.
It can be a good benchmark.
Yeah,
and at least
for
show
what's too
you
much.
where they're at. Right?
Yeah. But I'm glad you brought up the stick, because I like, as soon as the dog trusted me a little bit, like, I'm just using what's in the environment. There was a stick by us, and like I said that time, and people, you can use this, like, something about this phrase I'm about to say, dogs really seem to like. It coax them out. You just go, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And all of a sudden the dog was like, "I don't know. What am I doing?" And there was a stick right there, and I picked it up, and the dog was like, "What do you got over there?" And then she went for it, and I kind of just pulled it away a little bit, and she's like, "No, I want it. I want the thing." And I'm like, "Well, come on over here and you can get it." And then she puts her mouth on it, and like, I'm not going to play rigorous tug of war with her, but she grabs and starts to pull, and then now I'm a dog, and we're having a back and forth. I'm pulling, but I'm letting her win a little bit, and then she pulls it away, and I go, "Oh, you don't get to take it. We're playing a game together." And she pulls it, and then I pull it, and then we had a nice little thing, and then you took it, and kind of, we were at the time seeing how far can we get away from your dogs, because she finds comfort in them, and still be comfortable. And then once the stick was out, you use that to just kind of lure her around, and no longer do we have a down or tucked tail, and she's interested, and she's forgotten about your dogs. She's forgotten she's in an unfamiliar place. She's forgotten that she, in a certain respect, doesn't know me at all. And we just cruised around, and she was, I mean, for all intents and purposes, a regular ass dog for that moment. And they need those breakthrough moments, man. It's like she tapped into a part of the brain that was just not even stagnant, just not unavailable. And it just went boom, 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 and just opened up. And now this dog can do, has one more skill set, or one more ability, or one more motivating factor. Yeah, that was a beautiful little moment.
It was.
I'm glad we touched on that.
Yeah, me too.
Because it was very silly. It's like, yeah. It's like, I talk all this, I know how I talk. I sound so certain all the time. I do whatever a dog needs. If what they need is for me to crawl around on the ground and roll on my back and look away from them and pretend like I'm dead so they feel comfortable smelling me, whatever it takes. If I need to coo like a little baby, if I need to make cutesy sounds, if I need to tell them that they did a really good job, even though it was not that really big of a deal of a thing that they did. For them, it was. And then we celebrate it like it was the most important thing they've ever had. Whatever they need, that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing.
Probably one of the best pieces of advice that I've gotten from any trainer. It's that the best trainer in the world can only do what's right for that dog at this given time. There's no magical secrets of dog training. Like, the dog is in a certain moment, and you can only do what's best for that moment.
Oh, I've got a good one for you on that.
Yeah, hit me.
All right. So I was volunteering at the Dog Psychology Center about 8 years ago, and they have a program where they bring in a bunch of pound pups, and they have a lot of volunteers there. And the volunteers there are responsible for, while using the fundamental understanding of the methodology of the Dog Psychology Center, they take them around to experience things and broaden their worldview and be around dogs and build a relationship with the individuals there. And they do that by doing all the things that we're talking about. But at the end of the last time that I was there, Cesar Millan himself was there, and he took the dog that I had been working with for the previous 5 days. He took that dog up to do a display or a presentation for something. And yes, he's great at what he does. The dog doesn't know him. And so he was trying to do something with this dog, but because he doesn't have a relationship with the dog, you don't get to create that out of thin air for nothing. And so he's having this moment where the dog isn't really interested in being by him. And he's like, who has been working with this dog? Who knows this dog? And I'm like, that's the one that I've been working with. And whatever, I don't remember what he was trying to do, but whatever they were trying to do, he couldn't do. And not because he's not skilled, because they didn't have a bond. And so I went up there and was like, yeah, let's do the thing. Oh, this dog loves me. All right, come do the thing.
Nice.
And he used that as just to point that out. He's like, in the same way we were talking before, I can't just show up at someone's home and be like, you dog, do this, do that. You listen to me now. I'm the big dog in town. And even the thing I went on, the consult I was on today, the very first thing I did is we went for a walk. That's it. And I went on a walk for like maybe 12 minutes. and took that dog back because it was very uncertain about my presence in that house. And I told him, like, I only have maybe 45 minutes, but can I just disappear with this dog for a little bit and go for a little walk? And we go for a little walk. I show this dog I'm kind, I'm trustworthy, but what I say goes, and in a nice, gentle and meaningful and appropriate way. Went for a little walk, went to the bathroom, smelled some stuff, came back. We're best buds for the whole rest of the time. And we can be chill and we can be calm, but also if the dog starts to be mouthy on my hands, and be like, we're not doing that. But if I walked into that house the way that dog received me and started telling it not to do shit, it would just bark at me and be like, fuck you, dude. You don't get to come in here and tell me this. And so, yeah, there has to be, and I'm sure it's the way for you, that trust and respect. There is nothing more important to the fundamental bonding of human to dog than trust and respect. And that isn't just the trust that I'm not going to harm you. That's some weird, simplistic version of trust. That trust is that anything I tell you to do or not do is because I'm never going to put you in a position that compromises the integrity of your psychology. I'm never going to put you in a position that you have to claw and fight your way out of. And the respect kind of comes part and parcel with that. But yeah, I needed to have some semblance of trust with that dog. And for a lot of dogs, it doesn't happen that quickly. But yeah, in just 10, 12 minutes, just went for a little walk, showed that dog how things work out here. We went back in, changed dog.
Man, that's nice. And that is a point that I think should be shouted from higher rooftops in this industry.
Oh, you're right.
Because one of the intentions of this podcast is to show that dog trainers and dog people from different backgrounds have more in common than they do not in common. And in fact, we all want what's best for the dog. We may just have some points of contention how to get there.
Yeah.
But this fact, I'm only going to mention this because I know it is so popular and people may be able to relate to it. There's a certain trainer out there, he goes by the Dog Daddy, who likes to show these videos of taking the most wild, unruly dogs and whipping them into shape in a matter of minutes.
Yeah.
And it looks like a damn miracle.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, this dog could have never. And now the dog is not trying to attack this guy for the few minutes that he's holding the leash. But I can tell you that the dog doesn't trust the guy, nor does it change their psychology
Yeah, it's not
on
over
a
then.
long enough time scale.
Yeah.
And so when you take a German Shepherd who's barking to protect their owner, as a complete stranger, you grab the leash, you start yanking it around. The Shepherd shuts down, thinks it lost the fight, and now for a TikTok reel or a YouTube short, you're showing a behavior change, but it has to be sustained. The only way behavior change can be sustainable is through trust and a relationship that makes sense to the dog.
Yeah.
So
yeah, well, for what it's worth, I've seen him too, and most of the things that I see him do, I have done before. And when there's a difference between dealing with this absolute severe end of things and how that looks as far as going from not trying to murder something immediately to having some sense of reasonable calm around it. But that, there's just so much more to it than that. But yeah, people have a very hard time seeing extreme measures taken for a dog. And like you said, if you lead with that, the extreme stuff, you might get the compliance you're looking for. But what you do compromise is the lasting trust of that creature. And I mean, honestly, I would argue that the one problem I had with the show, The Dog Whisperer with Cesar Millan, is that it's just a show, and so it's done in a way that is to have a nice arc and an evolution, and this dog is this now. But there were times when you would see like a timer up in the corner or a thing that said elapsed time 56 minutes, as in from start of Cesar trying to get this dog to do a thing, he would take his time. And there were times when he would rush through it, but he would take his time, and you don't really know what it feels like to spend 56 minutes trying to get a dog to willingly do a thing when someone like Dog Daddy can just wrench it and what seems like get compliance immediately. But that the Dog Whisperer show, it didn't hit very hard that while it took 56 minutes to get this point across, and it's very hard for people to do that, what that indicated was the start of something, not the ending of something. That this is now the dog knows that this is the thing that needs to happen, but it's now incumbent upon these people, and there has to be follow-up with that you now have to do some version of this over and over again until the dog establishes a new habit and understanding of things. And yeah, like people would ask me, well, how long is it going to take to solve X problem? It's like, well, let's say we're both perfect all the time for the rest of our lives in how we address this dog. It could be 6 months, could be an hour and a half, could be a year. Like there are some behaviors that are so deep in a dog, or some things that people don't want to hear, that it's going to take 3-4 months of consistent, let's say, effort to shift this in a way that it establishes a new version of trust. But like I've had foster dogs with me for 6 months, 8 months, because I knew that dog was going to a place that they don't know what I know. I had to test that dog in the most amount of circumstances as humanly possible to trust that somebody who doesn't know what they're doing is going to be able to keep this going. And that doesn't happen in a week. Absolutely not. Can I establish a brand totally new habit pattern in a week? Because that's not how habits work. But I can show that it's possible, and then leave it up to the person. And as I'm sure you know, that there's no amount of things that we know or that we can do or that we have that will change that dog forever. Everything comes down to the afterwork and the person. That's why I really like multiple session group classes, because then people get to ask questions in real time while watching the way 10 other people solved a problem with their dog. Each step in each session is going to a new place that is a little bit more difficult, very intentionally thought out, and by the end of it, they put in 8, 10, 12, 15 hours of work overseen by somebody who can show them when they're doing it wrong or not optimally or ideally. We can show it by doing it ourselves. Now you do it. I know that probably felt like you were doing what I was doing. It wasn't that. Let's try again. And it is hard for people, and I wanted to touch on this earlier about the deliberateness and the decisiveness and confidence thing that somebody I worked with last night, I was showing them how to walk just nicely with their dog. And we were doing some like gentle bumps on the leash. I generally don't use harsh corrections on the leash. But then I showed her, if the dog is not responding to that, there's a million ways we can get this point across. And so I just started walking backwards. And now the dog is in front of me. I mean, technically, I'm going that way. And if I were facing that way, they're behind me. But I would argue I'm still... or if I was facing that way, they're behind me. I don't know what I said. But now I'm facing them, but I'm walking backwards. So they're kind of technically still behind me because I'm going that way. And anytime the dog tried to rush past me, I just went, hey, and just kind of slowed down, that this dog isn't just going to rush by me every single time that it tries. And I'm like, all right, now your turn. And I told her, I'm like, listen, I don't know if it was obvious, but there was a certainty and a deliberateness and an assertiveness and a confidence in which I did that you're not going to have that right now. And it's embarrassing to learn a new skill as an adult. There was another friend of hers was there who brought her dog, that it feels shitty to be bad at something in front of somebody who's an expert. And I point that out. I'm like, listen, you're going to make more progress doing this same thing by yourself than you are with me. I'm going to show you how I did it. We're going to talk about the difference between what you did and I did, but enough will remain there that when you practice these things in the comfort of your solitude, without the social pressure and the presumed criticism and judgment of others, and it was in a busy place in Austin, that was just you and the dog, just keep doing this stuff. And you don't get to just flip a switch of confidence. That comes with laying down a baseline of understanding and also knowing what to do if things get a little bit wonky. That's how the confidence comes in. You don't just flip a switch on. You're like, now I am confident. Well, that's false confidence.
Power pose. Yeah.
No. It's not that. But I did go out of my way to say what I just did, simple as it seemed, is thousands and thousands of days and dogs of effort to do it in a way that is so precise, it would seem braggy for me to really get across that I don't want you to do your interpretation of what you just saw me do. I want you to spend time imitating or mimicking exactly what I was doing. And that includes how sharply you snap your finger, how decisively you step into that dog's space. But yeah, confidence isn't just a switch that you flipped. And I do point that out in my sessions, that your initial version of this is not going to get the results that you just saw me do, even if I show it to you, tell you how to do it, and then hand you that leash. There is just a learning process of finding that amount of certainty when all we've ever done is be waffly with our creatures. I don't know, maybe, I guess.
Do you want to?
Could you please? Yeah.
Should we?
And there's times for that, but if we're working on stuff, no, you got to find a way to find some deliberate assertiveness, and it can be subtle and it can be gentle, and I can get across a boundary that is no compromise. I can do that in a firm way, and I can do that in a soft way, like even if it's just blocking with my body, stepping into their space. There's a way to be insistent and deliberate and assertive in a very gentle way too. But it does come with no compromise. And yeah, that's hard for people to grasp when they're new at the process.
Well, it's patience for the dogs, and it's patience for the humans who have never been taught that this is a possible way of dealing with the dog.
Yeah.
Like you said, a lot of social pressure to have a well-behaved dog, but also social pressure to not be mean to the dog.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a conundrum for a lot of folks out there.
Yeah, and they do feel concerned about what other people will think. But I have noticed, even with kids, that while someone might feel that way, if another parent sees a parent out and about telling their kid, absolutely not, are you doing that thing? I've had it. We're not doing it anymore. You can sit down and you can chill out. You might feel like you were being an asshole, and I assure you, some parents are going to sneak up and say, I really appreciate that you were willing to be firm like that in public. I get a little embarrassed or ashamed about it, and I do worry what people are going to think, and it felt really nice, like I'm doing the right thing to set a firm boundary. And yeah, we do worry about the social pressure where any mistake that you might make in public, someone is probably recording you, and they're going to put it on X, and they're going to put it on Instagram, and they're going to take you down and remove you from modern society.
You're going to get canceled.
Yeah, you're going to be canceled.
You're going to get canceled.
And fuck me, does that ruin a lot of things in this world that we can't be firm or set a boundary or make a mistake in front of people because there's going to be a camera that just ravages your existence. I fucking hate that.
Yeah, we make mistakes.
Yeah.
I make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, it do be like that.
It do be like that, but here we are.
Yeah.
So I want to wrap up shortly.
Yeah.
Got some puppies to get to,
Yeah.
but I want to end on a positive note.
Yeah.
For you personally, do you have any, I'm sure you have many highlights, but are there any specific moments or memories or journeys that you've been on with people regarding their dogs, or maybe just the dog itself, that you are really proud of?
So many that it would be very hard to single any of them out, because obviously since you just posed that question to me, I would be thinking of, over a decade of experiences. And so what I'll go with is one of the most recent ones, and it was out here in Austin. And I just want to highlight a person in particular. I did a talk at Buzzmill here on Riverside in East Austin, and a gal that maybe she saw it on Instagram. Her name was Nikki. She had a little corgi named Boba, and she came to that first talk. And as I have a tendency to just drag on with what I talk about, if there's people that are willing to listen, then I'm gonna keep talking about stuff. And she stayed till the very end. Her dog, her corgi, just barked. Not incessantly, but pretty consistently throughout the whole entire time. And I remember I said the name Boba once through the microphone that day, and just saying the dog's name, it's just like, and trying to rush towards me and super obnoxious. And she had no confidence in her leash management or anything like that. And she reached out and said, my dog, I was already concerned when I went to that talk of yours, but then my worst fear came true. We were on a walk, or we were playing, and my dog went after another dog and tried to harm them, and it freaked her the fuck out. So she reached out to me, and she said, this is what happened. What can we do about it? And I said, let's go to work. And we talked about how much work a person is willing to put in, and keeping in mind that the information that I share with somebody, they might be getting alternate information all over the internet. And that's a chapter in the book I'm writing, that just don't consult the internet broadly for things. But she was willing to put her total trust and faith in me, and everything I told her to do, she did it. We in I don't know if it's in other places in Austin, you can rent out people's backyards. Neither of us had a good yard, and she was worried about what her dog would do with other dogs. She paid to rent out people's backyards. I brought all my dogs over so her dog can learn how to be around other dogs. There's this big group walk through the city every Saturday that she took that dog on once, and everybody thought it was hilarious. That dog was just the dog that barks at everything. They went on a 4-mile walk, and that dog barked the whole entire time from start to finish, to the point where just people were like, this is just insane that a dog can be like this. After maybe 2 weeks with me of just doing a few sessions per week, she took everything to heart. She did everything I asked her to. Her dog did great around my dogs. She needed to feel confident about that experience, that her dog wasn't going to hurt my dogs. And then as a final test, we went out on that same walk that she had gone on with 80, 100 other people, 5, 6 other dogs, and her dog was the best behaved dog there. And no, it doesn't always happen that fast, but to the degree that she was willing to take these new things to heart, put them into action, that she took her dog on an experience that 3 weeks ago was insufferable for her and the dog, and her dog was the best dog there, and people were just blown away that is possible. And she always wanted to be able to foster dogs, but she was worried based on her dog's behavior if she could even do that. And maybe a week after our last session, she took on a foster and had it for enough time and sent it out, and it got adopted. And so I couldn't ask for more than that in less than a month's time, this dog went from, I don't know if I can even have it anymore, to a dog that she could take everywhere. And it's because she believed in me and trusted in me. And Nikki, I thank you for that. And clearly Boba thanks you for that as well.
Yeah, way to work.
Yeah, it was
way to
great.
work, Nikki and Boba.
Incredible.
Awesome, man.
Ready to wrap up?
Yeah, let's wrap it up.
Cool. All right. Well, that was a lot.
Sure was.
Almost 2 hours. Great. That's the perfect
Do we
time
have a
frame.
timer up there?
Yeah. Under where it says ISO REC.
Oh, yeah.
Hour 52.
Oh, yeah. We were cooking.
Cool, man.
Awesome,
Well,
brother.
I think we got some important stuff out there.
We sure did.
Yeah.
And I wish you well on your journeys and
Thanks,
your
man.
travels in the future.
Thanks.
Our man Noah is getting out of here pretty soon.
Yeah. Back to California.
Back to
In
Cali.
Texas, we call that the forbidden place. Sorry. It's just a beautiful place to live.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's the best.
Cool, man.
Awesome, brother.
All right. Farewell.
Peace.
Cool.